I just want to make sure I understand your question. Is it how do you get focus on business outcomes versus technology outcomes, or
What's
is it
going on
different
in
than
the
that?
market actually? I mean, you mentioned we
Oh,
should go
gotcha.
with a problem and then, but there's a push that you need to do something on Gen AI.
Yeah, there is, and unfortunately, a lot of these pushes result in AI being in marketing material, not in the product.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a quick summarization, say, exercise with an API, with LLM's API, and add a summarized field to the database, and you can claim your product has AI. It does, but is that really what people are looking for, right? If you're in the business of summarization, maybe so. But if you're looking for something to be meaningful, I think you first have to look at what the business really needs, and don't flail about trying to get AI to do something cool so you can say it has it. I mean, take some time to investigate, what the business really needs, especially if it's a software product. How are you going to
Mm-hmm.
integrate this? How are you going to keep it safe? How are you going to protect your data? All those things have to come into consideration. And rushing into something without really examining what outcomes you want and how you're going to measure those, and whether or not the project's going to be a success, just typically doesn't lead to a good place. You might have read an article that came out a couple of months ago, I think, MIT talking about
Yeah.
95% of AI initiatives failing. And based on their sample set, I'm sure that's probably true. I see similar things, not necessarily with outright failures, but with just misaligned expectations. For example,
That's the right word, I
um,
think. Misaligned
yeah,
expectation. True.
yeah, and I think you have to have everybody aligned. What do we want to accomplish with AI first? How are we going to accomplish it? What are our guardrails? What are our metrics?
Mm-hmm.
And how long are we going to spend doing this before we decide it's a success or not? Um, AI projects, and back in the day when it was just called machine learning,
Mm-hmm.
it's you could get these projects could turn into money pits, right? That they just go on like academic exercises for months and months and months, and you're running experiments
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to get things better, and the business never sees anything but a giant bill. So, that's why I think starting small, being clear, being focused, understanding what you really want is the way to start.
All right. So now maybe for this question, you need to wear a hat of CSOs, right? CISOs. And what's going on with these early adoption and public models are available? And as large enterprises can't mix with their own data, private data, and all that.
Mm.
So are the chief information security officers are becoming a showstopper to adoption? Or they supporting these Gen AI adoption where the business or the IT folks need quick that, okay, we need to do something quick. But being in security officers, they want to put a proper guardrails and everything in place. So my question to what's your experience if you put your hat?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think it's the CISO's job to say yes or no, right? It
Uh-huh,
is not the CISO's job to say, you can't do this. The CISO's job
uh-huh,
is to identify risk, security related risk, and communicate that to the executive team, and then let that team make a decision. So, if you're part of that team, great, right? But if you're not, make sure you communicate it very clearly. And I think, for example, if you want to do something with, let's say, ChatGPT, and you want to incorporate some analysis of a spreadsheet, um, I think pointing out that, yes, there's a security setting in ChatGPT that says, don't use my data for training. Um, and that's great as long as you trust that, right? As long as at some point, they won't have some sort of developer, you know, do something slightly wrong, and then this, stuff gets stored in their archives and it's retrained later on. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the story about the Samsung board meeting that was, a little
Yep.
bit over a year ago. So those types of things can and do happen. But I think it's about looking at the risk. So maybe in the spreadsheet example, maybe you take some steps to obfuscate some data in certain columns or rows, just to make sure that it's clean enough so that there's very, very limited, if any, privacy or security risk based on the data, and that it's also still meaningful, so that whatever prompt you're giving ChatGPT is still going to return some meaningful analysis. But at at the core of the CISO is not a yes or no. It's not a gate. It is a responsibility to understand the risk and communicate it effectively to the executive team and to the company. So I think as long as you're doing that, then the executive team can feel free to say, you know what, we understand the risk, we're going to proceed. But it it's not the job to say you can or can't do this.